Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Triangle Offense. I'm Monish, and as always, I'm joined by Nishant. Another fun day of basketball today. The Lakers seem to be taking every game into overtime. What's up with the Lakers? You're not supposed to play Detroit Pistons for more than 48 minutes. You're not supposed to play OKC, who have a bunch of draft picks, for more than 48 minutes. What's happening with the Lakers?
Did they win?
They did.
Okay.
That's because
Because I
LeBron
seem to
decided to switch
remember,
off their bench.
yes, exactly. Because I seem to remember a fully loaded Brooklyn Nets with everyone under the sun going to overtime, double overtime. I don't know if that was triple overtime against a Cleveland Cavs that didn't have they didn't have Garland and they didn't have someone who should be in the GOAT conversation, Dante Exum, who got traded in that whole James Harden circus. All right, and they got their asses handed to them by a Cleveland Cavs team with a Colin Sexton who really showed up and showed out. So shit happens. What is important is to clinch it. What is important is to be clear when your balls are to the wall and there's one shot that decides the game. Who takes it? If you have a backup, great. Who's your backup? And a game plan. Went to overtime, yes. Am I complaining? No. Is that because I have Jeremy Grant in my fantasy league? Maybe. But the win matters. They got the win. Nobody's going to remember at the end of the season when it's 60 something wins team, which game went to overtime and which did not. We shall live with it.
So no worries at all about the Lakers' recent
As
form.
long as the wins come in, I'm not worried. No, I think my only worry with the Lakers would be that Anthony Davis is honestly the only piece that puzzles me right now. I can't even say I'm worried because we know how great he can be.
Yeah.
And he's proven himself in the playoffs now, so there's not that also. It's just, is it a niggle? Is it a recurring injury? Is there something they're trying to avoid? Because it looks very suspect the way he's playing and the amount of protection he seems to be getting in minutes. Where even now LeBron plays more minutes almost every game than Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Now you can put some of that down to LeBron's desire to come out and perform, but it is still strange. I don't think he's gone all out in too many matches. AD, that's very very strange. Everyone else has fit in beautifully. Mark Gasol, I think we've discussed this also. He needs to go, or at least be relegated to a backup spot, and Lakers maybe need a big man there. But other than that, like Montrezl Harrell's been a beast. Schroeder's been an outstanding addition, taken so much of the
True.
load off LeBron. Kuz has finally settled into his off
Yeah.
the bench role, and he's been spectacular. Really, we should have a Kyle Kuzma appreciation episode, pretty much. So everything else seems to be going well. Defense is awesome as ever. AD on defense too has been pretty amazing, but it's just the attacking part of AD's game that's the big concern, bigger concern than Marc Gasol. But otherwise, they're good. I'm sure they'll figure it out.
All right. And I'm sure we've spoken about the Lakers multiple times in the
Yeah,
past, and we will be doing over the course of the season. Whenever there's a loss, I'm sure I'll bring up the Lakers and
yeah,
ask, are you worried or whatnot? But
yeah.
today I
So,
want to talk about a team, Houston Rockets. I decided to do this episode over the weekend where they were having a good run, and then they go they go and lose back-to-back games and become an under
yeah,
500 team yet again. A lot of this can also be attributed to the loss of Christian Wood, who's been
sure.
probably an amazing turnaround
Yeah,
of a career for him, right?
yeah,
And he's been brilliant. I'm looking at this team. They seem, since the James Harden trade, they look like an absolutely different unit. Not just in the players, but the kind of attitude they have, the kind of
right.
defensive hustle, they are the best defensive team since the James Harden trade. And they were probably amongst the last five when he was there. And now Brooklyn's the last five. So you know who's responsible for that. And
Yeah,
look at this team. They have a lot of fresh energy. They have a bunch of guys who have something to prove. And I'm looking at the squad.
right.
John Wall missed 2 years of the NBA, multiple injuries, comes back, has something to prove. Victor Oladipo, we made a lot of fun of him after being linked to multiple teams, and now he has something to prove, and
That's
he's
true.
doing well.
Yeah.
Christian Wood, thrown around the league, played for 5 teams in the last 6 years or something like that, undrafted. He's coming, and he's probably one of the favorites for the most improved player.
Yeah, yeah, breakout stuff for sure this season. Yeah,
Absolutely. DeMarcus Cousins, who missed the entire season last season, had a lot of personal issues as well off field. He comes back, he has something to prove as well.
he has a lot to prove on court and in court. Yes. Sorry, guys.
All right. Moving on to that, PJ Tucker, he missed 5 years of the NBA. He comes back, he has something to
Yeah,
prove as well.
right.
Jason Tate, he was in Australia last season playing with random dudes, and now he's here and he's starting when Oladipo takes a break or John Wall takes a break, and he's doing really well. So, bunch of guys who have something to prove, and that kind of shows when they play. They're happy for each other, they're
Right.
supporting each other, they're there for each other. What do you think of this team? I mean, did they look good? Did they look any good to you?
No, they look great. It's a bit like these bunch of renegade, great talent. This isn't a question on any of their talents, but players who were on the fringes of most discussions where they
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be, and for reasons that you stated. Hunger, I guess, is a huge motivator for all of
Yep.
these guys, and also a lot of them have a lot to prove on the fitness front. Can they
Mm-hmm.
last the length of a season? If a Demarcus Cousins or anyone similar is not getting paid the kind of money that that skill set warrants,
Mm-hmm.
part of that could be attitude issues in the past, or some other concerns or whatever. But a good part of that is, are they bankable? Like, can you're going to pay them all this money, but are they going to last the season? Because a lot of these guys are also coming back from fitness is something that they've also got to
Yep.
prove. So it's an interesting season. Going by historical trends, a lot of these guys are injury prone. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that has to be factored in when we start making projections. But taking it game by game, this is the kind of team that you would now want to root for, right? That
Right.
were ravaged by injuries earlier, by playoff disappointments, by Westbrook coming in, then walking out, James Harden finally walking out. It didn't look, if you're a Houston Rockets fan going through the offseason, it didn't look very good for you.
Yep.
Everyone wants out. Who's staying? Who are you getting? Is there going to be a franchise next season? Are you going to do another OKC where you amass like double digit draft picks over the next 5 years, which is great, but what now? What
Mm-hmm.
about now? And they were in that kind of situation. To get what they got for Westbrook, which I thought was a decent return,
Yep.
but to get what they got for James Harden, which is a haul, and you will see this payoff over 2 to 3 seasons once those draft picks start kicking in, because I have a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of first rounders coming up this year and the next year.
Yep.
Um, and they got good pieces in the trade. So I think overall, they did well for themselves. They have a great team and they have a lot of draft capital to build that, including some trade pieces that maybe they can flip along with some picks for an established player. So I think they're well settled now. Team's
Mm-hmm.
great. Um, Christian Wood was a huge blow. John Wall was too, because they missed him in their most recent outing. What I want to see from this team, and we'll get to their ceiling and all of this, but what I want to see from this team is first that their players can play a stretch of games without having fitness concerns.
No, yeah. So my follow-up was so when we did the early season predictions, when we took our power ranking, then we did the top 8 and top 10 even, Houston Rockets didn't figure in it. We said probably this is a rebuilding year,
Right.
but seeing the run of form that they have hit, leave aside, forget the two recent games, but they've been playing impressive basketball. Do you think this is a team that can actually finish in the top 8, top 6 even and get an automatic playoff spot?
Yeah, they have the talent to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's why I brought up fitness, because I knew
Yeah.
we'd at some point we'd have to discuss.
Yeah.
If the question is, are we going to revisit our projection of what their ceiling is and whether we think they're a playoff team or not? We can, because we prefaced all of our comments back then with there are so many ifs at this
Yeah.
stage. I mean, back when you made the comment that who the hell knows? Who knows who's staying, who's going, who's coming in instead? Now that we know, now that there's some sense of shape to that squad, and maybe they'll make some changes, but I don't think that there's anything drastic coming up this season. So
Mm-hmm.
so then who do they have, right? They're going to bank on John Wall to be their primary ball carrying point guard and
Mm-hmm.
their main playmaker, right? They've then got Oladipo, who I've always said he's a great player, he's a star, but I don't quite think he's the level of player that he thinks he is.
True.
And that's my only gripe against him. He's an all-star even if he plays to potential.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
they have Oladipo, they have John Wall, they have my man PJ Tucker, the only guy Anthony Davis fears in the league, and they have Jason Tate, as you mentioned, who's playing really well. Like this is an unheard of
Yeah.
talent, and he's coming in, he's balling out, so that's great. Um, and and then they've got Dante Exum, who came in the James Harden trade as a part. It's just a 4-team circus. There's so many movements there. He's not had a real run yet. Eric Gordon's perennially injured. So all of these variables, it's still tough to say will they last the distance. I can look at a Chris Wood and say, all right, we've seen enough to
Mm-hmm.
know that a lot of this can last. It's not a fluky, streaky performance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to have a good season. You can see that. You can see maybe Oladipo will play the distance, maybe. But John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, uh, Eric Gordon, a lot of these pieces, their fitness is going to be such a concern. That's the only thing that's going to prevent. If they're all fit and playing, and the way these guys defend,
Mm-hmm.
this is a bona fide top 8 automatic playoff qualification team. Worst case, play in games. I think you mentioned this. Since the Harden trade, if we only take the games that they've played since the James Harden departure, this is the number one defense in the NBA.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
astounding for the players
It
that
is.
they have, and that they just put them together. They didn't have time to fix any schemes. It's a new coach. So it's not
Yep.
even like there's an existing system. That's unbelievable. And it shows the level of hunger that these players have. Each of them has a point to prove. Each of them has a dog in the fight of narratives and PR. And that is unbelievable. So if they can defend like that, and I
Mm-hmm.
know they can get buckets at the other end in multiple ways. Chris Wood's a threat in the paint. Demarcus Cousins is a stretch big. He can go inside and out, and he's huge. Have you seen the guy? So
Yeah.
that presence in the paint is great for them. John Wall, not a great shooter, but he's an A plus playmaker, and he can finish strong at the rim. And then Oladipo can do both. So
Yep.
I think they have enough versatility and enough talent there. And they have some three shooters too. They have a bunch of three shooters. So
Right.
there's enough there on offense to keep them in the game. And their defense seems to be good enough to win them games. So this is a bona fide playoff team,
Mm-hmm.
barring fitness concerns.
Yep. Do you think this is a team that can run it year after year, or this is a team that is put together for this 1 year
Yeah.
and then you'll decide based on how they last? Because, like you said, fitness is a big concern. I don't know how long DeMarcus Cousins will last. Don't know how long John Wall will last. So, do you think this is a team that is going to stay here? Because the Rockets fans have seen playoffs every year since the last 8 years. It's the longest
Yeah.
streak that is currently that is currently there in the NBA. So, is it a team that is put together to make the playoffs this season and see how it goes, or it's a team that is here to stay for the immediate next 2-3 years?
Okay. I don't think it doesn't appear to be a team
Mm-hmm.
that was put together with purpose. I think it was a team that put together as in, let's get what we can get.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the Russell Westbrook trade, I'm not sure they had too many options of teams just piling on to try and get Russell Westbrook.
Yep.
So they got what they could get, and I think they got fair value. In the James Harden trade, they got a lot of draft capital, but
Mm-hmm.
in terms of immediate players, they had Karis Levert. It would have been nice to see them hold Levert, but they decided to flip him for Oladipo.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. So that's a conscious move. They got in Oladipo. But all of the other guys that they have signed, it doesn't look like it's a long-term vision. And if it is, then it is a disappointing one because this team will overachieve to an extent and kind of make the playoffs, which is an overachievement because it was a hodgepodge team that was put together
Right.
at the last minute and new coach and all of that. But after that, if the club has ambition to build, especially because they have choices, right? Do you want to build a team and go for the chip
Mm-hmm.
in the short run, or do you
Mm-hmm.
want to take a longer view of it, say 5 to 8 years plan, and build through the draft? If you're building through the draft, then some of these players are going to go because then you're going to behave like a small market team. You'll play low on
Yep.
salary or flip some of these players for better experienced guys that can coach your young talent. If you're not building to the through the draft and you want to go for it, absolutely. Then again, then even more pieces will get flipped along with picks to land superstars. Nothing tells me this is a team for the long run. I think this is absolutely a team for this year. They'll see who stays, who goes at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they have two ways in which they can develop this squad. But in both ways, a big chunk of this team will be disrupted.
All right. So that any final predictions of where you think the Houston Rockets will end up? Do you think they'll end up in the 7, 8, 9, 10 and then go to the playing games, or
Yeah,
top six is quite difficult given how stacked the West is? But
correct.
do you think they have a chance to get there?
No, I think top six would be incredibly unlikely, given how many teams there are in the West. And
Right.
I think the realistic expectation is get to the play-in spots and then try and
Mm-hmm.
get to the playoffs.
and
Top
face the
six is
Lakers
tough
and
both
lose
because
in
the
five.
West is stacked and because they have a lot of volatility in terms of player availability. So top six is
Right.
a stretch, but playing games for sure.
All right. So it's a playing games, which means you'll end up playing Lakers in the first round, most probably, and then you lose in five, as you've been
Yeah.
doing for the last few
I mean,
seasons.
in the West, it doesn't get like who. Imagine there's an upset and the Lakers don't top the West.
Uh-huh.
Okay, who's going to top the West? Clippers, you're screwed. Who's Utah, you're screwed. So there's really no. I think with a squad like this, no. But seriously, just getting to the playoffs like Portland last season,
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that they made it to the playoffs. Yes, they got
Right.
gentlemen swept in the first round, but just the fact that they got there was an achievement for that season.
Of
Now,
course.
overall, are you going to be disappointed and say, no, we should do better? Sure. But with that squad, that season, that was a big deal. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Houston's in that kind of a place. To lose, they've been gutted in terms of superstar talent that they had. Not
Yep.
that they didn't get good stars in return, but they lost their entire core. They lost their GM and their head coach.
Right.
Lost or
Right.
chose to leave or got rid of, whatever. But all of these changes happened. The core of their team has changed. They
Yep.
flipped their big man midway through the season last season and have two new guys this season. Their entire backcourt is new. Their
Mm-hmm.
wings are pretty much new. Outside of PJ Tucker, there's really no continuity here. Maybe Daniel House Jr., but he had that
Yeah.
thing in the bubble, and, and then so there's some discontinuity there also. So for this team to get to the playoffs is an achievement. It's fine if they get bounced out, and they probably will very early.
All right, so that was the Houston Rockets. I think they play the New Orleans Pelicans
Yeah.
tomorrow. We'll see if they can bounce back from the two-game losing streak. It's about time, but it's a team that I enjoyed watching. I will be watching them. Uh, I'll be watching even more games of them because I really enjoyed how they play and they seem to play for each other, fresh energy, which is always enjoyable to watch.
Yep.
But
Let's see. That should be a fun game. Pelicans, by the way, playing. The Charlotte Hornets are playing how the Pelicans should be playing, and the Pelicans are playing how really no team should be playing. So, with that talent, they've got a lot of stuff to figure out. They've been underwhelming for me this season. So, interesting matchup.
yep, and that's all for today. I will catch you tomorrow after tomorrow's games, and we'll take it from there.
All right, peace.